Recorded live from Space Coast Podcast Studios in Melbourne, Florida, this is the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson. Brought to you by MGMC Pharma Group, where we make a difference. Check out the virtual tour of our cannabis cultivation facility on our website, mgmc-group.com. Now here's your host, Michael Patterson. Well, hello. Welcome in to the next episode, which is this one. I'm Michael Patterson, your host of the Cannabis Report, and so excited to be here today. We're going to have a great show today. We got a really awesome person named Marne Coit. She is with the North Carolina Extension Hemp Law program, and she's going to tell us all about the hemp law and specifically the federal law, a little bit about the state law going on in North Carolina with the hemp. And she is an agricultural attorney, something that you don't really see a lot of in general, but also an agricultural attorney who knows a ton about hemp law and what's going on in the hemp industry, which is very exciting. Before that, I want to introduce our producer, Mark Patterson, wherever he is. Can you hear me?
Hello, Mike. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing good. How are you doing, Mr. Patterson?
You don't see me on the screen, but you can hear me on the podcast.
Yes.
And I sound exactly the same either on the podcast, or I look exactly the same on the podcast as well as the YouTube. I will tell you that we had our first rugby matches. I'm a youth rugby coach. We had 2 divisions win and 2 divisions not win. I was wearing a mask, Mike, and sunglasses, so I really only have sun on my actual cheekbones. So that is the unique type of sun layout system that we have here in Florida in the winter, just right here.
Well, yeah, considering it's wintertime and you're getting sun and burn. A lot of people don't remember that in Florida is that, yeah, you can still get a sunburn when you come down here. And so even with COVID, things are somewhat open here. You just got to be careful. Vaccines are starting to roll out, which is great. And so hopefully things will be getting better in that respect. But this is great to be on, having Mark on. And then let's go ahead and move into the news, Jesse.
It's time for Cannabis News.
Cannabis News brought to you by MRX Extractors. MRX Extractors are built on years of research and system validation to provide reliable processing. Our ASME certified machines adhere to the highest standards of quality in the world for pressure vessels. For more information and to see our amazing line of machines, go to mrxextractors.com. That's mrxextractors.com. Once again, mrxextractors.com. MIKE, take it away.
Okay. I need to actually have the news stories, Mark. So this is the part where you actually read the news.
Back to me, and I'll start the news. How about that?
Why don't you do that? Why don't you go ahead and start the news, Mark? That'd be great.
I will do that right now.
Okay.
Earlier this week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer reiterated his support for ending medical marijuana criminalization as part of the foundational 3 stools of policy to address in this session of Congress. Last October, Schumer said that he will put legislation in play if the Democrats gain majority control of the Senate. Schumer spoke of the prospects of advancing legislation that he has co-sponsored, the Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act, which deschedules cannabis and provides grant funding to encourage states to review and expunge past marijuana convictions. In describing the impetus for including marijuana policy reform as part of the priority agenda, Leader Schumer was characterizing it as a matter of racial and economic justice. A young man is arrested with a small amount of marijuana in his pocket. He has a criminal record for the rest of his life, can't become a productive citizen. This one won't hire him, that one won't hire him. End quote. There's a lot to do, and we have to succeed. So, Mike, it looks like Senate Majority Leader Schumer is behind marijuana legalization.
Well, he is, and so Schumer has been talking a lot with the Democrats about doing this. The challenge is that how, again, as we talk about on this show, it's we know legalization is going to happen at the federal level, but how is it going to happen? And so that's where the devil is in the details. So what Senator Schumer's talking about is the decriminalization side. I think there's a lot of bipartisan support for that with decriminalization. So just remember, decriminalization is not legalization. So decriminalization is where if you have a little bit of cannabis on you, they haven't determined how much that is, then you're not going to go to prison. You could get a fine or something small, no jail time and what have you. So I think what that needs to start first, because studies have shown and research shown that people who use cannabis, they use it equally, whether you're white, black, Asian, any type of race. Everybody typically uses it the same amount, but black and brown people typically go to prison for that. And so we need to get rid of that immediately. Also, the next phase, I think, is going to hopefully bring in banking. As he talks about decriminalization, then he talks about deschedulization. So if you're unfamiliar right now, cannabis is considered a Schedule I drug under the DEA. So that means it theoretically has no medicinal value, which I think most people watching this show or listening to this show would not agree with that. So what I think is going to happen is if it does stay scheduled, then they're going to move it up to a Schedule II, which means they can do research on it, but it's still under restriction. However, it's now legal to do research on it as long as you get permitting through the DEA. And it's a lot easier to get permitting if it's a Schedule II than a Schedule I. Schedule I is extremely difficult. Schedule II is a lot easier to do research, and I think that's where they want to go. Depending on what the Biden administration wants as well, I think that would be a way to get more research done. But I agree with Senator Schumer, is we just need to deschedule it, and so that way anybody can work with it moving forward.
Moving our way south on I-95 from Washington, D.C. to Maryland, the push is on at the Maryland General Assembly to legalize marijuana for recreational use. Medical marijuana is already legal in Maryland. 15 states and the District of Columbia have already legalized recreational cannabis. House Bill 32 calls for the tax measure or tax revenue collected from the legalized marijuana to be invested in the state's 4 historically black colleges and universities, including the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, as well as communities impacted by the war on drugs. The war on cannabis and its enforcement has led to devastating costs and decades of harm to people and communities of color. Joel Madden, lead singer for Maryland-based alternative rock band Good Charlotte, also supports legalization and has been working with political group Progressive Maryland on this issue. I'm glad to join with Progressive Maryland in support of legalizing and regulating cannabis possession and use. Together, we also want to ensure that those who have been historically harmed by cannabis laws are the ones who reap the benefits of this lucrative economy through government support of small cannabis businesses and putting tax revenues into low-income communities and communities of color, Madden said. Public opinion polls, both nationally and in Maryland, have shown increasing support for marijuana legalization. Expected tax revenue from legal cannabis sales could also help the effort to gain traction in Annapolis, with the COVID-19 pandemic stressing the state of Maryland's finances. So, Mike, how soon do you think that Maryland will go legal?
Well, I think it's, I don't know if it's going to pass this time. I think a lot of it is, what you're seeing is with this push in Maryland is what we've seen in Delaware and what we've seen in New York and what we've seen in New Jersey is already legalized. But the recreational train is coming. I think what they're talking about doing, and the challenge here is as people go into recreational law, then we still don't have any guidance from the federal government. But it's interesting because history is repeating itself. If we look back at how alcohol got through prohibition back in the 20s and the 30s, where it became, if you're not familiar, it was illegal in America, believe it or not, years ago. And then there was so much pressure to make it legal again. One of the main reasons it did become legal again is because the U.S. government needed money. So I think we're moving back to that, to where these states are getting decimated from their budgets due to COVID, and they're looking for different ways to increase revenue. Another thing that they need to make sure they need to look at is the tax rate cannot be too high. If you go over 20% tax rate total, you're going to start to see more people going to the black market. That's why we want to make sure that that tax rate stays below 20% in any recreational state. That way more people will actually go to the stores. The stores will make money. That tax money will go into the system, and it will be used for whatever the states want to use it for, and what it sounds like Maryland wants to work with the historically black colleges. As a side note, when I went to East Carolina University and played soccer, we played University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which is on the eastern shore of Maryland in the middle of nowhere. They have very few resources, so anything that they can bring to the historically black colleges there, I think would be a benefit.
In the 3 years that you played soccer at East Carolina University, Mike, how many wins did the team have?
I already know what's coming. You know what? We won enough. Okay? That's all I got to say.
So
we won enough.
That's politically correct in saying you won four games in 4 years?
No. 1 year we won 7 games. So we did win 7 games 1 year. And I was the second leading scorer my sophomore year. So just to let you know.
Does East Carolina still have a soccer program?
They do have a women's program now. Yes, they got rid of the men's program. So that was after my time. I could not control that. But I did finish up playing rugby my senior year. And if we're going to bring that up, didn't you play rugby at Appalachian State, and didn't you come to the 1994 state championship at East Carolina, and you did not win a game the entire time, did you?
Did not win.
You did not win a game. And just to make sure everybody knows this, okay, since you brought it up, you didn't even you lost to Duke. And Duke's like losing to women. No offense to women, because the women's team could have beat y'all too, but you lost to the men's team. Was it 35-0? Was that what it was?
I don't recall that.
Oh, you don't remember that. You don't remember that.
I don't recall that score.
Oh, okay. So
I do know that you got garbage time in both of your games. Okay, so that's all you got. All right. Yes, are you done with how great you were for your half a year playing rugby? Okay, and we'll continue.
Really, go ahead.
Moving down 95, we head to the Sunshine State, where Mike and I live, to Florida. Legislation aims to legalize cannabis for adults and review pot-related convictions. State Representative Carlos Smith of Orlando introduced a bill in the Florida House this week that would make marijuana available for use by adults over 21 without needing a medical marijuana card, as part of a round of legislation that would also review certain marijuana crime convictions. The ability of marijuana for adult use legislation would establish a robust and free market regulatory approach to medical and adult use of marijuana in Florida, according to Smith's office. Now, to put in perspective what a recreational business would be for the state of Florida, $2.1 billion retail, $128 million in sales tax, and $672 million for tourism taxes. So a significant impact to the bottom line for Florida. If approved, the bill would revise licensing and functions of medical marijuana facilities in Florida, authorizing anyone over 21 to possess and or deliver cannabis in specific amounts. The need to end Florida's prohibition of responsible adult use of cannabis is long overdue. This bill creates a sensible bipartisan framework for legalization that can earn the support needed to pass the Florida legislature. It doesn't include everything I'd like to see, but it's a fresh start Floridians deserve to finally move past the draconian cannabis prohibition era. So, Mike, what's the now the Florida legislature is only in session until like March, right? So, you're really close to this issue. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's not going to pass. So, usually when you start
seeing Debbie Downer today.
Well,
oh my
but
goodness.
This is the thing, though. But remember, this is part of the process. So, yes. So I know Representative Guillermo Smith. He partnered with a Republican senator to put that bill in. The challenge is neither of those are in the hierarchy of the legislature in Tallahassee. So we follow that very closely. But the good thing is it brings a lot of awareness to the issue. Now, in Florida, we're voting to legalize recreational cannabis in 2022. So you could look at this a couple different ways. Is the state legislature trying to take advantage of this now and pass a law that they want rather than letting the people decide? Because that's exactly what happened when we passed medical cannabis law here. They passed a very limited medical cannabis law, and then we went back 2016 and through a constitutional amendment, we were able to get a more a better law that works for more people. If you're unfamiliar, Florida is almost past 500,000 patients here for medical cannabis. So it's the largest medical cannabis program in the United States right now, and we're not even hitting 2% of the population here. So with recreational cannabis coming, I think that the Representative Smith's bill to apply for recreational cannabis, it will not pass. But it's going to set everybody up for next year when we vote, because it will pass. And if you're unfamiliar, a constitutional amendment in Florida requires 60% to pass. Most states only require 50.1% or somewhere around that, but Florida is very difficult. But the last time we passed with over 71% of the vote for medical cannabis, and I definitely expect recreational to pass next year, but not through the legislature.
Well, thank you for that color commentary on that article, Mike. I'm done with the news. Now I'll take it back to you.
Okay. And so one of the questions that I get a lot of times during the news is they see me looking down and it looks like I'm writing. And a lot of times I'm writing notes as Mark reads the news, because we try to do this literally when we say live, we do it live. So we're going to make some mistakes and everything because it's real. And so Mark usually picks the stories. I usually don't know what they are. And so we do some analysis based on that, because I want to make sure everybody who's watching and listening understands what is the stake that we're doing at with these news articles. And we don't expect you to know everything, but we want to keep you abreast of what's going on around the world, because cannabis is going to be a massive growth in 2021 as well as 2022. And then moving forward after that, we still don't know exactly how it's going to look, but we know it's going to be big, and that's why we get excited, and that's why we're doing this show, to make sure people can
Green
definitely
tsunami, Mike. Right, green tsunami.
Definitely take advantage of that. So let's go ahead and introduce our awesome guest today, Mark.
Well, our guest today hails from North Carolina. In my mind, I'm born to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Now you can't just feel the moonshine. And ain't it just like a friend of mine?
We get it.
Had me
We get it.
behind.
We get it.
Yes, I'm going to Carolina in my mind. James Taylor has nothing on me. Yes, she resides in North Carolina, where this attorney is the hemp law specialist in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics at NC State University. She taught the first accredited class on hemp at NC State. She loves podcasts and gardening, so I'm glad we've hit one of those two favorites on this show. Let's give a warm Cannabis Report welcome to the hemp queen herself, Marne Coit.
Marne, welcome into the show.
That is quite the introduction.
Well, you told me, just so you know, before the call, Marnie's like, I want Mark to sing to me. I was like,
yeah.
Are you sure you really want that?
Voice I have.
Really?
More than I could have asked for. Thank you for that.
Right.
Well, Marty, so happy to have you on the show. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
So
I'm looking forward to doing this.
Well, good. We're glad you're here. And so definitely give us a little bit of overview about you and your background with NC State, and then we'll definitely start talking about more hemp stuff.
So as Mark pointed out, I am on the faculty at NC State in CALS, which is the College of Ag and Life Sciences, and my department is Agriculture and Resource Economics. And in my role, I teach food law and I teach agricultural law. And in 2019, I taught a class called The Business and Law of Industrial Hemp, because I saw that was a need and an interest for our students. And that was a fantastic experience. I can tell you more about that later if you want to hear more about that.
Sure.
And then in 2018, I started getting involved in hemp and hemp law research. And in 2019, I picked up a partial appointment at NC State Extension, specifically in hemp law, because there is this really big need for knowledge and information and outreach about hemp law. I've never seen anything like this. There's nothing in law that changes this quickly. So just to give you an example, I did a presentation on a Thursday a few weeks ago. The following Thursday, I had to update my presentation because what I said already wasn't completely accurate. And I said something that morning that I said, this might change later on. And sure enough, 3 hours later, something else changed.
It's called job security, Marnie.
Right. So there's always a lot going on with hemp law.
Right.
And so my role in Extension is to provide information in a way that hopefully is clear and easy to access to farmers. That's our biggest clientele segment is growers. So in North Carolina right now, we have more than 1,500 licensees.
Wait, 1,500 licensees to grow hemp in North Carolina?
Yeah. So
wow.
as of 2017, hemp was legal to grow in North Carolina. And that first year, I think we had between 70 and 90 licensees. So between 2017 and the end of 2020, it grew to 1,500 licensees.
Wow, that's crazy. So go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of people, and people have invested a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort into this crop. And so I feel like whatever I can do to help support them in terms of getting that legal information out there, I feel like that's really the core of my job.
I think that's great. And if you're unfamiliar, that is what Marne's job is extremely unique. Do you know of any other states that have a position like you to educate farmers?
There are a few other states that I know who have lawyers in their extension programs. I think it's Indiana and Texas. There may be a couple others, but there aren't a lot. And Maryland also. And I'm not sure of anybody else who's an extension who specializes in hemp law, though.
It's extremely unique. And so if you're unfamiliar, guys, Marne and I met through LinkedIn. And how many times have I said on this show, LinkedIn is where a lot of your referrals go through. And so I was so taken aback by Marne's background, being a lawyer in agricultural law. This is a huge field that's opening up for hemp and cannabis. And so, Marne, as an attorney, and the calls that you're getting from farmers, are what kind of questions, or I guess a better question would be, what is the knowledge level of the law for the actual farmers in North Carolina?
I would say it's mixed. I get a lot of varying phone calls. So just last week, I got an email from somebody who was asking about banking. So the way, for folks who aren't familiar with extension, there is an extension or cooperative extension service out of every land-grant university. So basically every state in the U.S. In North Carolina, we still have extension county offices. So we have folks in every single county. So we have extension agents who work on the ground day to day with growers. And so sometimes I get questions directly from growers. Sometimes I'll get questions from agents. So this was a question that came from a grower. They had gone to their local extension service, and the question came up to me. And the question was about what banks are currently open to working with hemp growers, because this person said their account has been shut down, I think 3 or 4 times already recently. And so this is an issue that we've been hearing about the last couple of years. I sort of thought it had gotten better, but apparently it's still an issue. And the reason for that, I think, is because hemp, again, is legal in the United States. I just want to be really clear about that. It is a legal crop. Marijuana at the federal level is not legal. And so I think sometimes hemp businesses and banks get caught up in this, what they think of as like a gray area. So if a bank sees something with CBD in the name or hemp in the name, they automatically associate it with marijuana and think that it's illegal. And that has really serious consequences for the hemp industry.
And it does, and we see that with a lot of our clients. One of our guys who have been on one of our shows with the hemp and CBD library, they're doing Delta 8. They're selling Delta 8 products online, and their bank has been shutting them down. And so we were able to connect them to Integrated Compliance Solutions, which owns a company called Greenlight Payments. If you haven't seen them from a previous show that we did, they're the largest merchant processor for hemp and cannabis, medical cannabis businesses and recreational cannabis businesses in the United States. So it definitely is a problem. And then a question that I have for you regarding tobacco in North Carolina. If people who are listening are unfamiliar, tobacco is a huge crop. I grew up in North Carolina. We let Mark grow up there too in the same house. But in North Carolina, we have you on mute, Mark. So Mark's trying to go in, so we couldn't hear him there. So anyway, so North Carolina has a big tobacco history. Are you seeing tobacco farmers trying to make that switch into hemp?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I see a lot of people coming from different agricultural backgrounds who are getting into hemp. And I will say there is this segment who has never farmed before, doesn't have a lot of farming experience, but people are hearing a lot about hemp. They're hearing a lot about CBD, and so they want to start getting into this space. So we see folks who don't necessarily have a farming background. We see folks who are coming in from greenhouse production. So, for example, folks who are growing tomatoes, for example, in a greenhouse setting.
Okay.
Some of them transitioned into hemp because hemp can be grown either indoors or outside in the field. And yes, definitely tobacco growers. So I think as of, I forget exactly, I think it was the end of 2019, I had heard from somebody that at that point we had more folks who are licensed to grow hemp than licensed to grow tobacco in North Carolina.
Wow.
Which is a big deal for this state. Because as
That's huge. I mean, Tobacco Road, we've known it for all growing up, and basketball, ACC, Tobacco Road, and now you're saying there's more licensed hemp growers than there are tobacco growers in the state of North Carolina?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But I would think that the reason a lot of growers were getting into hemp, no matter whether they're coming from other crops or whether it's tobacco or cotton or whatever other crops they've been growing previously, I think it is because if we're really honest, farmers in this country have been having a hard time.
Yes.
And so folks are looking at this as a way to diversify, and frankly, some of them are looking at it as a way to keep their farms afloat.
Yeah.
And again, it is a legal crop. If you were to ask me what I think one of the number one issues is that's facing, or challenges that's facing our growers in North Carolina and across the country, is that the law has not been stable. So again, the law keeps changing. We don't have really stable laws yet. I think we're moving in that direction, but that's the number one issue, I would say.
And I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
Not just because I'm an attorney.
No, but I think because you are an attorney, I think you're coming at it from an interesting point of view, because you realize unless you have stable law, then businesses cannot get behind it. We all hear about the stock market and what the Wall Street wants. They want stability, because stability is dependable, and so investment needs to be dependable. And I agree with you. In regards to the processing side, or for specifically with industrial hemp, are you seeing any ramp up from all these growers? Are you seeing the other side of the byproduct of hemp and what they're making? And does your office ever consult with groups who are looking to get in that side of the process of industrial hemp?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I do work with processors also. So basically in my job, my clientele through extension could be anybody who's in the industry. Okay. So I've done trainings for law enforcement. I've done trainings for other attorneys. I've done trainings for just the general public. But in terms of processors, that's an interesting question, because as of, I don't know the exact numbers, but in 2019, in the fall, there was something that happened, again, here in North Carolina, but also happened throughout the country, where we had this oversupply because we had so many growers coming into the market really quickly. Yeah. We had overproduction, and so prices fell. And through 2020, I think we saw a lot of processors go out of business. Mm-hmm.
We've been hearing that too.
You have seen that too.
Mm-hmm. So we've seen that, and because you're looking, and we've seen it in the cannabis, the THC side too. If you have, you have to have that Goldilocks zone, and so of the right amount of product, the right amount of sales, and the right amount of access. And so I think you're starting to see that. What I see, Marne, is that the industry's trying to find its fitting. We're starting to get more infrastructure in, but we have to have that supply and demand. One of the things that I see is we have this challenge with, is it the chicken or the egg? Everybody wants to move into hemp-based plastics. Okay, well, is there a market there yet? Do you have the offtake agreements to be able to build the $30 to $40 to $50 million plant to be able to finance that? And I think as we start to see the federal law change on cannabis, I think you're going to start to see even more aspect or more interest in the industrial side, because what we're trying to see what we can get done is get more grant money, whether it be state money, federal money, for renewable energy. And I think hemp being that, with hemp batteries, as well as hemp being used for fuels, gasoline, concrete, industrial products. It's one of those things where it's the chicken or the egg. Well, who's going to build that massive plant, and then who's going to buy that product if it's hemp-based products? For industrial, all those industrial products have to be tested, because you're putting them in homes that are going to go for 30, 40 years. So we know that has to be done in that respect. And then tell us about the actual education for the students that you do at North Carolina State. What kind of students are interested in this, and what is their feedback once they receive that information?
Can I just go back to your this statement before we get to the students?
Sure.
So one thing I just want to make sure that we clarify for the audience is when you asked me about processing, my mind automatically went to processing for CBD.
Okay.
Because I would say our growers, maybe 96 to 98% have been growing for CBD.
CBD, yeah.
But one of the things you're talking about in terms of the chicken and egg issue, one of the things we're finding here, and again, I think this is true across the country, is the fiber side.
Yeah.
Right. When you're talking about hemp, you just have to be really clear if you're talking about CBD or fiber, and all of those uses that you were talking about for car parts and for plastics and for hempcrete, that's all on the fiber side. So fiber side, I know we definitely have one fiber processor. We may have two,
okay,
but there are very few because it's exactly like you said. We don't have growers who want to spend the money and the time growing for fiber if there's nowhere to sell it to, because they're going to be selling to a processor. And processors, like you said, don't want to spend that much money if they don't have growers.
Right.
So I had a conversation with somebody last week who is looking at that exact issue. I don't know what will come of it, but he is looking at it, trying to address all of those issues along the whole supply chain.
And I think that will be huge. And so it's interesting how you said there's over 1,000 people growing hemp, and only one or two are growing it for fiber. Everybody else is growing it for CBD, and that's why you're seeing the CBD prices in the United States plummet because of oversupply, which I think we're going to slingshot back into an undersupply in another year because so many people are slowly getting out of it. Then it's going to have a chance to balance a little bit because the prices that we're seeing overseas, because they have to have different regulatory structure and different permitting, is the prices are a lot higher with CBD. However, they still are coming down in that respect.
I agree with you.
And then tell us about your students. What kind of students are coming to your classes, and what kind of information when you're doing about the hemp? And then what is their reaction? Do they want to get into these businesses?
So the class that I taught took place in the summer of 2019, and I co-taught it with another instructor, Dr. Angela Post. She's in crop and soil sciences at the same university. And it was an intense short class where we spent 1 week in the classroom, and then we spent 1 week doing farm tours, going to a processing facility. Cool. So 1 week traveling around, actually looking at places, doing more hands-on activities, and then the first week again in the classroom. And that was an amazing experience, and not just because I put it together.
Of course it was amazing because you put it together, Marne.
But for me, it was an amazing experience because it was set up as an undergraduate class for credit. And what we found is half the students who enrolled were not undergraduate students. They weren't enrolled in a degree program. And so we had this amazing mix of folks. We had a couple of folks who were extension agents. We had somebody who wanted to open a retail store but wanted to make sure she understood the production side and wanted to make sure that she understood all the laws because she was being really thorough. We had somebody who was an investor who was looking at where he wanted to invest in the market. I'm trying to think of who else was in that class. We had a couple of growers. And so to be in this space for 2 weeks with people from all different backgrounds was amazing. But the best thing for me that came out of that class is that folks met one another and they developed business relationships, and they wouldn't necessarily have met or had that opportunity if we hadn't had this class.
Right.
So part of it for me is what they learned from the instructors, but also what they were learning from one another. And again, those business relationships. So if the person in the retail store had a conversation with the grower, which happened, I assume that that's not private information for them.
Right.
But they were able to establish that relationship. And for me, that was the best thing possible to come out of that class. And I know of a few instances where those business relationships started from that class.
And I think it's just great because you're offering this great service to people, because what I find is people are clamoring for accurate information and real information that is coming from legislative sources, because as Marne said, that we have to stay on top of this because the law is changing every single day. It's just amazing. And so Marne is an agricultural attorney with NC State. Her website for her company with NC State is hemp.ces.ncsu.edu. Again, that's hemp.ces.ncsu.edu. And then Marne, how do people get a hold of you, say on LinkedIn or social media?
So on LinkedIn, you can find me by my name, Marne Coit, Marnecoit. I I believe I'm the only Marne Coit on there, so my parents did a great job naming me.
Yes, you're right. There's not a lot of Marnies, so I think it's great. It's not even with a Y. It's Marne, which is great. Definitely easy to find her. But
right. They named me for social media purposes.
Right, that's awesome.
Marty, and then
go ahead.
You can email me at macoit@ncsu.edu.
And can you say that one more time?
macoit@ncsu.edu.
Perfect. And just as an aside, at East Carolina, my alma mater, our bitter rival, was North Carolina State. And I didn't hold that against Marnie for bringing her on the show. So, and Mark's rugby team got beat.
Oh, my gosh. You would always lose to him, Mike.
Really? Y'all lost to everybody.
What a good voice is.
Really?
Okay?
Is that it?
You're going to lose me from the show because I'm going to get a label. I'm going to get a record label to sign me. Marnie understands that.
Right.
Okay? Right. Thank you for being on the show, the Hemp Queen, Marne Coit.
Thank you so much, Marnie. All right. Thanks for Marnie. And then, Mark, let's go ahead into the entrepreneurial tip of the day.
The Cannabis Entrepreneur Tip of the Day.
Tip of the day sponsored by Self-Disrupt. Self-Disrupt is a modern-day white-glove personal branding service. If you need to be seen, they will get you noticed. If you have value to give, they make it more shareable in today's digital landscape. Bottom line is Self-Disrupt strategically crafts your legacy through personal branding content. For more information, go to theselfdisrupt.com. Take it away, Mike.
Okay, entrepreneurial tip today is use passion as your guide to your venture or your business. That is how you really find out what you're going to do. I had a situation where I heard of a family friend who went somewhere to do a business and it didn't work out. And this person had been doing businesses multiple times. And I kept hearing the same thing. Well, I need to make this amount of money per month. This is what I need to do. And this is what I need to make. So my question was, well, what do you enjoy doing? And I got this blank stare. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I just need to make this amount of money per month. And I'm like, okay, but I guess what I'm getting at is if you try to chase the dollars, it's probably not going to work. You need to focus on something that you really enjoy doing, because anything that you start up, you're going to be spending hours upon hours doing it. You may be working a full-time job and then doing things on the weekends to be able to find that value and find out what you really want to do. One of the guidelines I'd give is people's like, well, I don't really know what I want to do. Well, the way to give you my personal experience is with cannabis, I just did it all the time, and I really enjoyed doing it when I started, and I wanted to know everything about it, even when I wasn't working at my normal healthcare job. It reminds me of a good friend of Mark and I's growing up. He was always into Taekwondo. He just talked about it all the time, and I'm going to do this when I get started, and he just talked about it, and finally like, well, why don't you just go do it? And he did, and 15 years later, he has a very successful Taekwondo business in North Carolina. He started from the ground up with one facility, and now even with COVID, he has multiple facilities and is doing very well in the gyms in that respect. In regards to my time in cannabis and figuring out what I was going to do, I found that when I talked about it and still talk about it now, one of the knocks on me, people have said is, well, you're just too intense. You're just too passionate. And so
you're not as good looking as your brother. But go ahead.
That actually never comes up, but that's
really?
a whole other thing. But we
talk to different people.
Really. So what I found is that, even in formal relationships, people would say, well, you're just too I can't handle how intense you are. And so rather than using that as a negative, I use it as a positive. And so what I found is pre-COVID, when I would go speak, I would find after I would speak, I would step off stage and I would wait 10 seconds and a line would form. People would sit there and say, you're inspiring, you're inspirational, I relate to you. And so I hope that happens because I found something that I love to do, and it just comes through very naturally. So as you go through your journey and trying to figure out what you want to do as an entrepreneur, focus on what you think about all the time and what you absolutely love, and then try to figure out a way where you can make a living at that.
Well, and I can say, and you're in your journey, when you started, you didn't really know you would be in the position where you are now and kind of, much more international.
Right.
And I can say that, you tried to go domestic and all the doors are kind of closed, especially in Florida. So then that made you go out and look at other opportunities.
And it allowed me to really start pushing overseas and getting to meet all the people that I know now. And now with all of our partnerships around the world, we're in every major continent except Antarctica, which is exciting. Things are in startup mode, a lot of those places. But the good thing is that we are having footprints around the world. And I got to tell you, people outside the United States are awesome. People inside the U.S. are awesome too. But it taught me that we're all in this together, and we're all part of the same cloth, meaning we all want to make sure this moves forward. We all want to benefit. We all want to move the world and change the world in the positive. And I think cannabis has opened that up to where I've been able to meet some amazing people from around the world that I never would get to meet if I was in a different industry.
And Antarctica is not really a growing cannabis market, I think that was good that you stayed off.
Very expensive to grow there because it has to be indoors. All right, let's take us to our final segment, which is the Champion of the Week.
The Cannabis Champion of the Week.
Cannabis Champion of the Week, sponsored by World CBD Awards. If you want to be part of the world's only objective product awards competition, the World CBD Awards Conference and Gala is for you. For more information, go to worldcbdawards.com. Take it away, Mike.
Okay, the champion of the week is Americans for Safe Access, or ASA. So Americans for Safe Access is a nonprofit founded in 2002 as a vehicle for patients to advocate for the acceptance of cannabis as medicine. ASA works to overcome political, social, and legal barriers by creating policies that improve access to medical cannabis for patients and researchers through legislation, education, litigation, research, grassroots empowerment, advocacy, and services for patients, governments, medical professionals, and medical cannabis providers. With over 100,000 active participants in all 50 states, Americans for Safe Access is the largest national organization for patients, medical professionals, scientists, and concerned citizens promoting safe and legal access to cannabis for therapeutic use and research. We here at the Cannabis Report applaud and appreciate all that ASA does to move cannabis forward for the U.S. and the world. For more information about the ASA, go to safeaccessnow.org. That is safeaccessnow.org. Okay, when that brings us to the end of another show, and that's the way it is.
Mike, you had a great show today. I'm really excited that you were able to get through the entire show without your pocket square today.
Really,
that was very good.
Thank you. Thank you for that
analysis.
That ripping and amazing analysis.
You're welcome.
And that's the way it is in the world of cannabis today. The power of change is within all of us, and the world changes when we change. I had a great time, and I hope you did as well. And always remember, we are all we need. Until next time, see ya.